This is so severe and goes on for so long that everyone around that individual starts to accept that the victim has something wrong, that maybe they're delusional. Now I'm spoken about as though I'm the problem or the disordered one because of the lies he told them. They may actually start to plant seeds of doubt by portraying this person, their partner, as unstable or cruel or as the real problem. Welcome to Fan Mail, a space where I answer your real questions about toxic relationships, narcissistic abuse, and the long road to healing. Thank you so much for joining me for this segment of Fan Mail. I recently published a letter in which someone shared that their daughter-in-law had been a wonderful woman, a wonderful family member for a long period of time, for 7 years. And suddenly she turned into a monster to her son and to the entire in-law family. And they really couldn't understand why she did this and how they could have been fooled. And in that segment, I kind of talk about how malignant or darker types of narcissists can actually hide in plain sight for a long time until there's some moment of safety or that becomes secure enough that they feel able to step forward and really show their true light, their true self. And that sometimes this could happen for very long periods of time. In fact, another person responded to that segment sharing that her partner, somebody that she knew intimately, had gone for a long period of time until there was a moment in the relationship that cemented the commitment. And at that point, things changed. But I also heard from someone else that shared an opposite perspective. So I want to pull back the lens and sort of take this from many different angles. But first, let me share this alternate perspective of what could have happened. So this individual writes in and says, I was in a 23-year marriage with 4 children marked by coercive control and escalating abuse that eventually became physical. For years, I was seen as the perfect daughter-in-law, and my former in-laws even preferred me to their own son. But when I began calling out his abusive behaviors, the family rallied around him. Now I'm spoken about as though I'm the problem or the disordered one because of the lies he told them. So this individual wanted to point out that there are other reasons why somebody can seemingly change after a very long period of time, after a significant relationship with a group of people. So I want to go back to revisit this episode and really thank you for those who both came in with stories of similar examples that said, yes, my toxic partner, my toxic whoever, family member or loved one hid for a long time, but then they showed themselves eventually, and I was devastated by that, as well as those who said, no, there are other explanations for what might have happened. So I want to revisit this from different angles. And there are other possibilities of why somebody can seemingly change almost overnight from somebody that you saw as a loving, devoted, loyal person to someone who's very manipulative, even maybe monstrous. So let me give you 6 different possible scenarios that might explain for this sudden shift. The first is that it's the abuser who's casting the perfect daughter or son-in-law or perfect loved one in a bad light when really that person hasn't changed. Maybe in that private relationship between, this is a family setting, so they're in-laws, and then there's the primary relationship between the husband and a wife, or the partners, between the two partners. Maybe the one partner who's being victimized suddenly starts setting limits and calling out bad behavior, causing the abuser to feel exposed to his family. So what the abuser might do in that case, whether it's a man or woman, they might flip the narrative and begin to use Darvo as a way to smear the victim, as a way to make the victim look like the bad one instead of themselves. So they may actually start to plant seeds of doubt by portraying this person, their partner, as unstable or cruel or as the real problem. I don't know if you've heard of Gaslight syndrome. This is so severe and goes on for so long that everyone around that individual, the victim, starts to accept that the victim has something wrong, that maybe they're delusional. And there's been known cases of where these individuals have been hospitalized for this mysterious condition that didn't actually exist. It was manufactured by other people in order to dump the blame on that individual. So that's scenario number one, that the abuser has flipped the narrative. Possibility number two has to do with families who protect their own. And I think this fits more in with the person who wrote in with a letter talking about their 23-year-long marriage, how suddenly things changed when she stopped protecting the abusive partner, when she started calling this abusive partner out. Family members who have a dysfunctional, disordered member in their ranks will often close ranks around that individual to protect them because they get benefits off of siding with that individual. For one, if it's their child, they're protecting their own reputation as a parent by saying, I didn't raise a bad child. It's the person who's complaining is the bad one. It also, though, they may be getting some kind of benefits from that individual. Take my ex, for example. His family definitely closed ranks around him, but it was because he was financially supporting at least one of them. So it would hurt them at their pocketbook if they took him on. So you may often see this with children, adult children, who have a very established, well-off parent who's toxic. They may not challenge that toxic individual for fear of losing access to the money. That's possibility reason number two, family loyalty and power dynamics. The third possible explanation is that there's some type of trigger point that's happened in the victim or now who's become a survivor's growth. Say, for example, you have a toxic relationship, a pathological love relationship, and the victim in that situation is docile. Maybe they're showing people-pleasing tendency. They do a lot of fawning. But maybe after years of placating their abusive partner, they just get weary and tired and they start to find their own voice. And when they start to resist control, that behavior can look a lot like defiance, coldness, or hostility, especially to those who are still invested in keeping things the way that they were. And so a family watching this from the outside may see this victim become difficult as they're actually standing up for themselves and showing autonomy and strength. That's possibility number three. Number four is maybe there's some type of abuse escalation that has resulted in a cycle change. Maybe that this abuser's abuse has been escalating and becoming increasingly aggressive and reckless and controlling, and the victim is now becoming alarmed and worried about their own survival in this relationship. And because of that, they're reacting more intensely. Maybe they're shutting down, they're lashing out, maybe they're seeming more anxious and angry because of the dangerousness that's increasing in the home. And the family around them may see the change dynamic, but only witness the victim's change, personality change. They may not see that the abuser behind closed doors has become more aggressive, more scary, intimidating, and menacing. So they may interpret that the victim has become different, become less sweet, instead of seeing this as actually a response to a worsening abuse cycle. That's possibility number four. Number five is sometimes that there is selective truth-telling and withholding. We don't really tell people what's happening behind closed doors. Sometimes when we're in an abusive relationship, we pass it off as just them being, having a bad day, or we laugh it off as them being them. We really acknowledge or admit how things are behind closed doors. But once we start to stop selectively telling the truth, we start to really share what's happening, it may feel like a betrayal to say that, hey, your son and daughter is not that easy to live with, that I've been hiding the worst of it. I've been keeping the secrets of their massive betrayals. And there may be a retaliation against that truth-telling in which then the victim becomes scapegoated for coming forth with honesty. And then the sixth possible reason this could happen in a family like this is that families also get taken in by abusive people. They sometimes don't know what the truth is too. Is their son or daughter the good person that they often see and hope for, or is it really a rough person who's abusive? And it's very painful to admit maybe this person isn't as wonderful as they have imagined. And so they may then, instead of seeing that their abusive son and daughter as the culprit and the problem, they may actually project the toxicity onto the victim and say she or he made them that way. They're the reason why this person is that way. And then they'll hold the victim as the responsible one for creating the bad tension and for the abuse in the family. So I appreciate so much the pushback on my original answer. So thank you so much for sharing your stories and giving me alternative perspectives of what might be happening in that family context. And I hope that if you hear another example of a fan mail where you think that I answered it too narrowly, I didn't include other possible alternative explanations, I appreciate being challenged and having me revisit this. So thank you so much for the accountability. And we also got to go back and add complexity to this, which is really a good thing. So thank you for that. And if you have a question for me that you would like me to answer in a fan mail segment, please submit it through the form link that I've included in the show notes. Or you can also email me at hello@breakingfree-narcissistic-abuse and put in the subject line fan mail. Thank you so much for the trust in this. I deeply appreciate it. These questions are really fascinating, and it helps us to dig in deeper, specifically in the areas of your interest, which is what's most important.